The night remembers what the world forgets. It hides revelation in silence, not in darkness. Somewhere on a quiet hillside, a teacher turns to his disciples. His eyes reflect firelight, his voice barely more than wind. "Tell no one," he says. The command feels strange after miracles. Blind eyes opened, storms obeying a whisper, a dead man breathing again. Why hide what could awaken the world? But he knows the world isn't ready. Truth, when revealed too soon, becomes noise. It loses its sacredness, its shape. He wasn't guarding his identity. He was guarding the moment. Some truths burn if touched too early. The human heart, still fragile, still tethered to illusion, must first learn to see before it can understand. He wasn't silencing revelation. He was letting it ripen. Silence is not emptiness, it's preparation. Like a seed hidden in the soil, unseen yet alive, waiting for its right season. There's a rhythm to awakening: darkness, breaking, emergence, bloom. Every soul moves through it. Every truth must obey it. If the disciples had shouted his secret through the villages, the message would have turned into spectacle. The mystery would have become marketing. The sacred cheapened into slogan. He knew the danger. Once truth is named by the mind, it becomes too small for the soul. And the world would worship the words instead of the living presence behind them. So he cloaked infinity in silence. He let the secret breathe where language cannot. And the disciples, bewildered, trembling, learned that sometimes obedience means restraint, that love can be loud in its stillness. When he said, "Tell no one," he wasn't hiding divinity. He was protecting humanity from seeing before it could remember. Because to truly see, to see beyond names, beyond worlds, is to watch creation itself begin to unravel. The silence of Christ. The Gospels record it like a mystery. After wonders that defied reason, he would say, "Tell no one what you have seen." Over and over again, as though silence were a sacrament. But his quiet was not fear. It was discipline. He was teaching them how to carry fire without burning the village. When a miracle happens, the mind rushes to explain it. It wants to own it, define it, repeat it. But the holy resists repetition. It asks for reverence, not proof. He was not performing. He was revealing the unseen dimension behind all things. And revelation has its own timing. Too early, and it collapses under interpretation. Too late, and it fades into doubt. So he guarded the silence like a womb guards its forming child. Every word he spoke came from that hidden stillness. He taught that the kingdom of heaven is not a place. It's a perception. A state of being so vast that the world cannot contain it in sound. To understand it fully would be to see through reality itself. That was the danger, and the mercy. If he had told them the full secret, that the divine and the human are not two, the illusion of separateness would have shattered. And without the illusion, creation as we know it would dissolve like mist in sunlight. Because the world exists by contrast. Light needs shadow to be seen. Form needs distance to appear. God, pretending to be human, needs the forgetting to remember himself again. That's the rhythm of existence. Revelation through concealment. The truth hides itself to be rediscovered, endlessly. So his silence was not absence, it was strategy. It allowed love to grow roots before it bloomed into light. He didn't tell his disciples what the secret was. He taught them how to live with it, how to let the unspoken transform them from within. He was shaping their capacity, their inner vessel, until they could hold infinity without spilling it into words. Think of how a child learns to walk. You don't explain balance. You let them fall, rise, fall again, until movement becomes memory. That's what he was doing with the soul, training them to remember heaven while still walking through earth. The miracles were lessons, not exhibitions. He healed to remind them what was always true, that the body listens to spirit, that death is a costume, that matter is not the limit, but the language of God. And after each revelation, he said, "Tell no one," as if to say, "Don't teach this with your mouth. Teach it with your becoming." Because the truth doesn't spread by sound. It spreads by presence. Even now, his silence continues to echo louder than his words. Every time you feel an unexplainable peace in the middle of chaos, every time you sense something ancient moving quietly beneath your name, you are hearing that same command. Be still. Let it reveal itself through you. He didn't want followers who repeated his sentences. He wanted mirrors that remembered the same light. And the silence, this sacred, tender stillness, was the way. He wasn't asking them to keep a secret. He was teaching them to become one. Who he really was. They followed him through dusk and dawn, through laughter and bewilderment. Not because they understood him, but because something inside them remembered. Each word he spoke seemed to awaken an echo older than language itself. It wasn't learning, it was remembering. Who was he, really? Prophet, teacher, Messiah, or something even more unbearable, the mirror of what they already were. They tried to name him, as all people do with what they fear to face. The Son of God, the light of the world, the Word made flesh, titles to frame the unframeable. But every name was only a shadow of the truth that stood before them. Because what he carried was not a new religion. It was remembrance, a living invitation to wake from the dream of being separate from the divine. That was the secret too vast for words. That the infinite had folded itself into a single heartbeat, not to be worshipped, but to be recognized. When they looked at him, they saw God looking back. But when he looked at them, he saw the same. This was the terror of enlightenment. That the line between creator and creation is made of smoke. That God does not live above us, he breathes through us. And to realize that fully is to feel the foundations of the world tremble. He never asked them to believe in him. He asked them to see through him. He was not a destination, but a doorway. The healings, the wonders, the stilling of storms, all of them were gestures pointing to the same truth. That the boundary between spirit and matter is as thin as breath. He knew they couldn't hold that yet. Their eyes were still caught in surfaces, in stories, in fear. So he fed them glimpses. He let them taste eternity without choking on it. But sometimes, when the veil thinned too far, you could see it flicker in their faces. A moment of remembering, a flash of unbearable recognition, and he would say, "Tell no one." Because language breaks what wonder unites. He didn't want confession. He wanted transformation. He didn't want to be worshipped as exception. He wanted to awaken recognition. And that is the secret too luminous to publish. That there was never only one incarnation. There was one realization. And the same flame that walked beside them still walks in us, waiting to be seen not as miracle, but as memory. When he asked, "Who do you say that I am?" he wasn't testing theology. He was handing them a mirror. The right answer was not a title, but a remembrance. You are what I am once you stop pretending to be less. But the world wasn't ready for that truth. So he veiled it in story, wrapped eternity in parable, and waited for the day hearts could bear the full brightness of themselves. The invisible dimension. Every miracle he performed was a ripple from another dimension. Not a higher place, but a deeper seeing. He didn't come from above. He came from within. The kingdom he spoke of was not a realm in the clouds. It was a perception hidden inside the ordinary, the divine disguised as detail. He was teaching them how to look again, until the world began to shine through itself. To the crowds, he seemed to bend reality, but he was only restoring it. He was remembering the code beneath creation, the word that still hums beneath sound. He walked through fields and called them temples. He broke bread and called it cosmos. He lifted his eyes and saw no sky, only the pulse of the eternal dancing as blue. And still, he asked for silence, because the invisible must be lived before it can be spoken. Words too early can kill what they mean. He knew that if they preached what they glimpsed, they would turn the infinite into instruction. And instruction cannot awaken, only imitation. So he taught in ways that bypassed the intellect. He told stories where meaning shifted each time you heard them. He painted parables that grew as you grew. He was sculpting perception itself, training the eye to see beyond shape, the ear to hear beyond words. This invisible dimension was not elsewhere. It was what the world looks like when the eyes of the soul open. The blind he healed were metaphors made flesh, not punishment, but prophecy. Every healing said the same thing: you are seeing wrongly, and seeing wrongly hurts. When he opened their sight, he wasn't altering their biology. He was restoring their alignment. He was showing them that perception is creation. Because everything you see comes from what you believe. And the moment belief dissolves, so does the boundary of the world. That is why he warned them. Don't speak of this yet. Because once the illusion knows it's being watched, it begins to crumble. And the world, the fragile theater of human dreaming, still needed time to rehearse its awakening. He moved through both realities at once, the dream and the awakening, the seen and the unseen. He lived as the bridge, the silent place where eternity meets form. To follow him was not to worship a man. It was to walk toward that same threshold inside oneself. The invisible kingdom was not waiting beyond death. It was waiting beyond distraction. Behind the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the names. He didn't die to prove something to God. He died to prove something to us, that the boundary between heaven and earth is drawn in pencil. And when he rose, he didn't break the rules of the world. He revealed that the rules were never real. Even now, the invitation stands, to look again, to see what he saw, to step into the invisible dimension not by sight, but by surrender. For there is a silence that glows, a stillness that speaks. And when you enter it, you realize the secret was never about him. It was about you. The knowledge that undoes creation. There are truths too vast for sound. To speak them is to fracture them. And yet, they whisper through us, like light through thin cloth. This was the secret Jesus carried in silence, a knowledge so total that it unravels the very dream it illuminates. Because to know God completely is to dissolve the distance between knower and known. And when there is no distance, there is no world, no sky, no earth, no name, no other. Only the one seeing itself endlessly. That's why the secret was dangerous. Not because it was dark, but because it was too bright. Creation depends on contrast. The play of light and shadow, heaven and earth, self and other. Awareness, when it forgets its wholeness, dreams itself into form. We call that dream the world. And so, when awareness begins to remember itself fully, the dream begins to fade. He called it awakening. The mystics later called it union. The Buddhists called it nirvana, but he simply called it truth. Imagine the ocean realizing that it has always been the wave, that it was never separate, never small. The moment that realization becomes complete, the wave ceases to exist as a wave. It returns to the ocean. That's what this knowledge does. It doesn't destroy. It dissolves. It returns all things to their origin. That's why he said, "Tell no one." Because most hearts still need the beauty of the wave. They still need to dance in form, to learn through forgetting, to love as if they were two. He knew that if the secret were spoken too soon, the world's fragile theater would collapse under enlightenment. The actors would awaken on stage, and the play would end mid-scene. But he also knew the play has purpose, that the dream is not a mistake, it's a method. Through separation, love learns itself. Through darkness, light discovers its worth. Through mortality, eternity finds intimacy. So he protected the dream, not out of deceit, but out of mercy. The knowledge that undoes creation is not a curse. It is the completion of the story. But the story must be lived before it can be transcended. He didn't come to erase the world. He came to remind us that it's a reflection, a shimmering mirage through which the eternal contemplates its own face. The ones who understood fragments of it trembled. They called him dangerous, blasphemous, mad. But they didn't understand. The truth that undoes creation doesn't destroy life. It unveils it. He wasn't threatening existence. He was revealing what existence is. A breath God takes to taste his own name. When you awaken fully to that knowledge, you don't vanish from the world. You see it rightly. You walk through it transparent, unattached, luminous. The body remains, but the identity dissolves. What's left is not a person, but presence wearing a face. And that is unbearable to the ego, which survives only by pretending it is separate. That's why he said the way is narrow. Not because heaven is exclusive, but because so few are willing to vanish beautifully. This was the knowledge that could undo creation, that the one behind all things is the same one within all things, that every heartbeat, every sorrow, every death is God, learning to remember himself through the illusion of forgetting. He carried that truth like a hidden flame, knowing that if it were unleashed too soon, it would consume before it could illuminate. So he hid it, in parable, in silence, in the language of love. He buried it in the soil of human hearts, to bloom only when the world grew tired of pretending to be two. And perhaps that time is near again. Silence as protection. There is a holiness in restraint, a sacred tenderness in knowing when not to speak. Jesus wasn't keeping secrets to control. He was guarding the sanctity of awakening itself. He knew that silence is not the opposite of revelation. It's the shield that allows revelation to live. Like a candle in wind, truth needs the cupped hand of stillness. Without it, the flame becomes spectacle, and spectacle blinds instead of guides. So he taught by silence as much as by speech. He paused after miracles. He looked into eyes that burned with questions and said simply, "Tell no one." He wasn't withholding. He was protecting. Protecting the sacred from being turned into slogan, protecting mystery from the marketplace. Because once a holy thing is explained, it dies. Once it is owned, it is lost. Once it is broadcast, it becomes noise among other noises. The disciples didn't yet understand, but something in them obeyed. They felt the gravity of his stillness, the way silence wrapped around him like a second robe. They began to sense that his quiet was not absence, but presence, the soundless hum beneath all creation. He was showing them the rhythm of divine timing. That truth must arrive at the speed of love, not the hunger of curiosity. Love is patient not because it is weak, but because it knows the power of readiness. Only the open heart can hold infinity without breaking. And when the time finally came, when the secret could no longer stay buried. It wasn't shouted, it was embodied. Not declared from temples, but revealed through a cross, through surrender, through silence louder than death. Even in agony, he spoke few words. Because suffering, too, is a language silence understands. When he cried, "It is finished," it was not despair. It was completion. The seed had broken open. The silence had spoken. From that stillness, creation began again. Not undone, but unveiled. The dream continued, but the dreamers were changed. And even now the invitation remains. To guard the flame as he did. To protect what is sacred within you from the noise that would turn it into performance. There is wisdom in not rushing to explain your light. There is strength in letting it grow unseen, until it speaks through your being, not your words. That is the way of the Christ within every soul. The hidden work, the holy quiet, the patience to let revelation bloom naturally. The world will tempt you to announce, to prove, to shine before you're ready. But the true light waits. It doesn't fight the dark, it transforms it from within. So keep your silence. Let it protect you as it protected him. Let it be the soil where the infinite takes root. Because the ones who learn to keep the sacred unsaid are the ones who eventually become it. When the veil falls, there are moments when silence breaks, not with sound, but with revelation. When the veil that separates the sacred from the seen becomes so thin that the two worlds breathe through each other. That moment came on a hill called Golgotha. The secret, long guarded in whispers, was finally spoken. Not in words, but in surrender. He didn't declare his truth to kings or priests. He let it bloom through sacrifice. The cross was not the end of a man. It was the unveiling of the mystery he had hidden since the beginning. That life and death are not opposites. They are mirrors. When he said, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit," the illusion of separation trembled. The veil in the temple tore not by human hands, but by the recognition that there was never truly a barrier. What had been concealed could finally be revealed. The kingdom of heaven is not reached. It is remembered. It is not elsewhere. It is here, under everything we mistake for ordinary. In that final breath, he was not losing life. He was returning it to its source, returning everything that was fragmented to the silence that first spoke it into being. The disciples saw death, but heaven saw completion. The seed had opened, the silence had flowered. And when the stone was rolled away, it wasn't just a tomb that stood empty. It was the whole idea of limitation. He had carried the secret to its end, and the end was the beginning. He had told them, "You will do the works I do, and greater," because once the veil fell, the secret was no longer his alone. It was the world's inheritance. The same presence that walked among them now walked within them. Every heart became a tabernacle, every breath a prayer, every life a continuation of that same awakening. And still, the lesson lingered. Truth must not be shouted. It must be lived. For when it is lived, it spreads without sound. He rose not to prove a point, but to prove a promise, that what is eternal cannot be crucified. That love, once remembered, makes even death an illusion. He didn't erase the world. He unveiled its light. And in that unveiling, the silence finally sang. The inner silent centuries have passed, but the command still whispers, "Tell no one." Not because you must hide what you know, but because the truest knowledge cannot be told. It must be become. We live in a world drunk on noise. Everyone wants to speak, to prove, to proclaim. But the sacred still enters the same way it always has, quietly. The voice of God does not compete. It waits beneath your thoughts, beneath the thunder of your identity, beneath the need to be right, or heard, or praised. When you finally grow still enough, you find that the same silence that wrapped him now wraps you. The same presence that spoke through his eyes is waiting behind yours. That's the real secret. Not that he was divine, but that so are you, and you've simply forgotten. The silence he taught was the path to remembering. It's the space where the noise of me dissolves into the awareness of I am, where the boundaries of the body blur, and you realize that what you call self is just the place where the universe curls inward to experience itself. He didn't tell his disciples to be silent forever. He told them to be silent until they understood, until what they would have said with words could instead be spoken with presence. And that is still the invitation now. Don't rush to declare enlightenment. Live so quietly, so truthfully, that the light in you speaks for itself. Because when you embody the sacred, there's no need to convince. You radiate. The true disciple is not the one who repeats what was said, but the one who becomes what was meant. Every breath, every kindness, every surrender, that is the continuation of his message. That is the new gospel written not on paper, but on the human heart. The time for silence does not mean the absence of sound. It means the mastery of attention. It means listening so deeply that every sound, every face, every moment becomes a verse of the same eternal song. You will know when your silence has ripened, when peace begins to glow through your eyes, even in the middle of storms, when you no longer need to argue for truth, because you have become its evidence. Then, and only then, will you be ready to speak, and your words will not divide, but awaken. That is the silence he left behind. Not an absence, but a frequency. Not a pause, but a pulse. It hums through every heart that dares to be still. It vibrates through every act of love that expects nothing in return. It waits in you now, the ancient secret, patient as dawn. And if you listen deeply enough, you'll hear it say what he once said, not as command, but as invitation. Be still, and know that I am. Let the world chase miracles. Let the noise shout its theories. You know better now. Keep the ember of his silence alive within you. Guard it not with fear, but with reverence. Let it shape you in quiet ways, the way dawn shapes the horizon long before the sun appears. Because when you finally open your eyes, you'll see what he saw. That creation was never meant to be undone, only remembered. And remembrance begins in silence.